Hey guys, Chris here from LuckyGunner.com. This is the third and final part of our series on Appendix inside the waistband carry, also known as AIWB or 1 o'clock carry. Today we are talking about safety. Is Appendix carry safe? You can't even really mention Appendix carry on the internet without someone making a joke about shooting your junk off, or that you'll hit yourself in the femoral artery, or something about violating Rule 2. I've personally carried a gun in an Appendix holster almost every day for about the last 8 or 9 years, so these issues are not new to me. And in that time, I've noticed that it can be really difficult to have a productive conversation about gun safety and Appendix carry. And I think that's because we tend to talk about gun safety as if it were a binary condition. My idea of safe is based on whatever set of safety rules I personally subscribe to and my interpretation of those rules. If you follow those rules, then you are declared safe. And if you break them, you're unsafe. Now, that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for healthy debate. But in reality, as long as we're handling and carrying guns, we can never be 100% safe. A firearm by its very nature is a dangerous tool, and people by nature are imperfect and capable of mishandling those tools, even when our intentions are good. So what we're actually dealing with is degrees of more safe and less safe. And that changes from moment to moment based on what we're doing with the gun and the environment around us and even our own state of mind. Strict adherence to the rules of gun safety is not where responsible gun handling begins and ends. We can't allow our rules to get in the way of our willingness to actually think when we're handling guns. So with that in mind, I believe asking whether appendix carry is safe is the wrong question. There are risks associated with appendix carry just like there are risks anytime we pick up a gun, period. The question is whether appendix carry presents more risk than the alternatives, and what can we do to mitigate or eliminate that risk? Okay, so let's look at the two main common safety concerns associated with appendix carry: holstering the gun, the act of putting the gun in the holster, and the direction the gun is pointed once it's in the holster. Now, I know there are other safety questions, but those are the ones that people seem to have the most problems with. A large percentage of unintentional self-inflicted gunshot wounds seem to happen when someone is inserting the gun into the holster. This can happen with any form of carry, but there is a perception that the risk is greater with appendix carry because the muzzle comes close to your femoral artery and some of your most valued body parts. In order to shoot yourself while you're reholstering, two errors have to take place. The muzzle has to cover your body, and your finger or another object has to come into contact with the trigger. So we've got safety rules number 2 and 3 to remind us not to do those things, but we're all human, make mistakes, so I want multiple fail-safes in place. That's going to be a combination of a specific holstering technique and hardware that facilitates safer gun handling. I'm going to let Spencer Keepers from Keepers Concealment explain some of the details. In my recent interview with him at the Rangemaster Tactical Conference, he demonstrated his holstering technique using a CERT training laser to show that the muzzle never covers his body during the holstering process. He's going to be using his trigger finger to activate the laser, but just be aware that is not part of the actual technique.
We're going to draw the gun, we're going to press the gun out, we're going to shoot. Going to do whatever, right? From there, I like to bring the gun back to a hard break. I want to look, visually come down and quickly check visually that my finger is in register as high up and as far away from the trigger as I can get it. So from here, guys, it's very important that we take and turn the gun about 90 degrees, clear our cover garment. And what we want to do is we want to take the muzzle of the gun straight to the holster. All right, so to make it safer, I'm simply going to drop my strong side foot back a little bit and bow forward. If I have a DASA gun like a Beretta that I am so very fond of, I will put my thumb on the hammer, or if you have a striker control device, look that up, guys. It's a really important little piece of gear. All right, so from there, take the muzzle straight to the holster, just like that. Then I'm gently, carefully, precisely going to reholster the gun. I don't want any type of quick reholster.
Using that holstering procedure, we've got multiple ways of reducing risks that complement and overlap one another. Even if we happen to skip a step, as long as we do the next step or the one after that, we've got at least a chance to put the brakes on before there is a sudden loud bang. One extra step that I don't think Spencer mentioned explicitly is that Before the gun moves toward the holster, you should visually check it to make sure there's not a piece of shirt or a drawstring or something in the way. Appendix carry is really convenient for this because it's easier to see the holster when it's right here in front of you compared to when it's around the back behind your hip. On the hardware side, you've got the option of using a double-action hammer-fired gun or a Glock with a striker control device or a pistol with a manual safety. When used properly, those things offer you one more chance to avoid disaster, even if you're having a really bad day and you happen to totally screw up all the rest of the holstering process. Another hardware component is the holster itself. Ideally, it needs to be a holster that stays open even when the gun is not in it. When you remove the gun from a floppy nylon holster like this, or a hybrid holster with a soft backer, the mouth collapses. So to get the gun back in, people tend to muzzle their support hand so they can open it manually, or they will point the gun inward toward themselves and angle the muzzle to force the mouth of the holster open. Now, obviously, that could be really bad. And actually, I see people do this a lot more often when they're carrying strong side than with appendix carry. I've shared this photo before, and it continues to be something I see people do frequently at the range. If the gun were to discharge while it's pointed at this angle, this person's going to end up with more than just a hole in his butt cheek. That's going to do a lot of internal damage and could very easily be fatal. If you have to use a holster like this, it's probably better to remove it from your belt first and then insert the gun, but doing that presents a whole new set of safety risks, and it's really not practical if you want to do any serious practice with your draw stroke. If you just use a holster that stays open, you could avoid all that altogether. Even with a good holster, there is still some risk with reholstering on the strong side, just like there is with appendix carry. Spencer has some good tips on how to avoid that.
Now, here's how a lot of guys will reholster strong side. They're going to bring the gun back. They're going to make a thumb pectoral index right here. They're going to turn the muzzle down and then poke the gun into the holster. And if you can see that laser, well, I just covered the living crap out of my leg. If the round went through my leg and hit my femur, there's a very good chance it would cut the femoral artery in two. So don't think that holstering strong side is any safer than holstering appendix if done improperly. To holster properly strong side, guys, we're going to bring the gun back. We're going to look and confirm our finger is in register. All right? Now watch this. Again, finger on the trigger to activate the laser only. I am simply going to now bring my feet together, and I'm going to bow my hips out a little bit. You know how we pushed our hips forward for appendix? Strong side, we're going to push our hips out. Then we're going to bring the gun down. We're going to angle the muzzle out just a little bit. We're going to come down. We're going to touch the holster and then go gently in.
Another major objection to appendix carry is that there's no way to prevent the gun from pointing at your body while it's in the holster. This is an apparent violation of Cooper's second rule of gun safety. Never let the muzzle cover anything you are not willing to destroy. Or the NRA version, always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. I think an implied part of both of these rules is that they're referring to guns that a person is actively handling. If we apply the rules to all guns all the time, we would never be able to store or transport a gun without pointing it at somebody. If I were to take this pistol and I put it in the safe, close it up, and stand next to it, yes, there is a gun technically pointed at me right now, but I'm not violating the spirit of Rule 2, and I don't think anybody would say this is unsafe. That's because we know the gun can't fire unless somebody presses the trigger, and the trigger can't be pressed while the gun is in this box. The same thing is true for a gun that's in a holster.
Once the gun goes in the holster, any proper holster, okay, that covers the trigger guard, if nothing can get to the trigger, and you have a properly functioning gun, all right, read that, guys, as no one has done a really fancy or horribly bad done trigger job. You got a properly functioning gun. The gun is inert in the holster. People say, well, you know, where's that gun pointed when you're carrying appendix? If it's in the holster, it doesn't matter. The other side of that is, think about where the gun might be pointing if it's even in an outside the waistband holster. All right? Finger on the trigger to activate the laser only, guys. But if it was in an outside waistband holster like this, you're still just standing there covering your leg, and guess what? Your femoral artery. I also believe that if you were to accidentally, negligently shoot yourself, it doesn't matter where that is. There might be more lucky places to be shot than others, but we don't know what bullets will do. Just a month ago, an individual negligently discharged into his posterior with a 230 grain hardball 45. The surgeons found the bullet in his left lung above his heart. I don't know how it got there, but that's where they found it. So we don't know what bullets will do. So getting shot anywhere matters.
Now, I have to admit that even I had some doubts about where the muzzle would be pointed with an outside the waistband holster, and since Spencer didn't use an actual holster for his demo, I decided to try it out myself using a laser training cartridge. Wearing a holster with a forward cant a little bit behind the hip instead of right at 3 o'clock, the muzzle points about 2 feet behind me on the floor. But every time I take a step, the muzzle covers my lower leg, and if I bend or reach, it points right into my body. Even if I stay perfectly upright all day, the muzzle pointing back that way, it's going to cover something I don't want to destroy, whether it's my dog or a kid or the person standing behind me in line at the grocery store. There is no way to carry a gun on your belt without that kind of thing happening. But if it's in a holster, it doesn't matter. If I thought there was even a chance for the gun to discharge on its own while it's holstered, I wouldn't carry one at all, not Appendix or Strong Side or anywhere else. With a well-maintained firearm in a good holster, that just is not a possibility I worry about. Okay, I think that covers most of the safety issues that people seem to have with Appendix carry, but even if you still have some concerns, I hope this is giving you something to think about. We don't all have to agree on every detail of the best practices for gun safety, and I think we'd all be a lot better off if we weren't so quick to point fingers at each other for being negligent or reckless just because we have minor disagreements about safety issues. I know the stakes are high, but we could all benefit from having just a little more humility when it comes to this kind of stuff. And if you have to disagree with somebody, try not to be such an asshole.